Welcome to the J29 Podcast, hosting conversations with American pastors about how they engage politics and culture in their preaching, discipleship, and mentoring. For more information on the J29 Coalition, visit j29coalition.com.
Derrick, Mike, you are both pastors at different parts of these here United States. I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Like, who are you? Where do you pastor? What context do you pastor in? Derrick, you go first.
Hey, everyone. My name is Derrick Puckett. I pastor in Chicago, Illinois. My church name is Renewal Church of Chicago, non-denominational church here in the third largest city in America. The best, may I add that,
Oh, wow.
to the podcast.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Okay, I see.
Wow.
We're starting it off
That's
on that
strong.
foot. Okay,
That's strong. Okay. Okay. Well, my name's Mike Erre, and I pastor in Nashville, the godliest city in America.
Okay.
Yep. Lots of country music. We know that's God's music. I don't believe that, but I know. I'm a grunge guy. I stayed there. But I pastor non-denominational church. I'm on a staff where I'm the primary teacher, and a lot of our church are kind of Southern Baptist refugees coming out of the trials and turmoil of that denomination these days.
Yeah. And I'm in Phoenix, which is the hottest city in the world. So that's what we got on offer. A lot of people move from Tennessee and Illinois to move here for sunshine. Go figure.
Yeah.
So you're pastoring Chicago, Nashville. As you're thinking about pastoring in the year of our Lord 2025, and specifically like hot topics, right? So whatever the topic is, which they do seem to change. How are you thinking through what topics do I address? Do I address them in the preaching, in the teaching, in the one-on-ones? What's coming to mind for pastoring right now for you?
I mean, I don't know about everybody else's context, but being in a large metropolitan city, like all the topics are here. And I feel like it's on level 10, if you want to say, versus maybe a rural area. We deal with everything. And so there's from teaching and preaching. And I have a multiethnic church, just to give some background on that. Multiethnic church, so there's people from various different backgrounds, whether it be political views or ethnicities, background, Southern Baptist, it doesn't matter, denominations are there. And so figuring out a way to talk to people and engage their hearts, their heads, but also challenge them too. And I like to think proactively about things. So if there's things, I don't want to obviously there are things that you have to react to that go on in society, but if there's a way I can proactively teach our people to engage, whether it's the civic arena or things that they're going to have to deal with at their jobs or schools, it's something that I try to work at. Do we hit everything? Not at all, but trying to think about the people in the pew every time I preach and teach. But yes, it happens on one-on-ones. It happens from the stage at small groups. We have to think about it here in our context. That's for sure.
Yeah. Mike, how about you?
We have built our community on the idea of the table and hospitality. And so the Lord's Supper, it's the unity talk every week. And we teach a lot on how radical and socially reorienting the Lord's Supper was in its original context. And that's why it was such a threat. That's why Peter gave up on it when some Jewish folks came down, into Antioch, and Paul had to confront him. And so we spent a lot of time talking about the table and its social application. It's not a place where Jesus meets me because I've been rescued to heaven after I die. It's actually the outworking of the death of Jesus in the way the new humanity now orders itself and prioritizes itself. And there's this dynamic effect that James talks about in the church, where the higher the folks of considered more higher status are brought low, the folks that are considered by the world more lower status are brought high, so that we can partake in a meal as brothers and sisters. And so we run everything through that grid. We talk about politics, we talk about immigration, we talk about the only thing we really haven't touched on is guns. Um, uh, and we also we do a Q&A kind of at the end of every teaching. And that invariably leads us into all sorts of topics. So we're hopeful on the one hand that the hospitality of the table and the constant reminder of what the table represents gives us enough communal sort of orientation so that when we get to crazy questions or hot topics, we're approaching them with that table kind of in view, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're both hitting on spicy subjects. Thinking about format, like how do you do it? So whatever the topic is, guns, abortion, race, gender, there's always the risk or concern there's going to be a bad actor who comes into this gathering. If it's a public forum or open setting, it's like, what happens if somebody comes in and starts, causing problems? Still, there's other concerns, like how do we make sure that different perspectives are heard within the congregation? So thinking about formatting, I think most of us probably understand, like, okay, well, there's preaching, but are there other spaces in your teaching, discipleship, catechesis? Like, what are some tips, coaching, you would give to us on how you frame the programming part of facilitating these conversations?
Yeah, that's great. What do you do, Derrick?
I think that's a great question, and I loved your comment about forming tables, Mike. That's we use that same kind of conversation. I think lives are changed, not just in preaching, but they're changed at dinner tables. So we sit down.
That's right.
We share intimate times together, and if you can share that intimate space with your neighbor, a lot of times that's where lives are changed. And so we do see that Ministry of Jesus with Communion. And so what we do, one, we try to preach that, but also teach our people to do that in community. One Sunday a year, we do a conversation. We call it the Gospel and Race Conversation, where on stage, I pick a different topic every year, but it's teaching our people how to have a table conversation. This year we did just why multiethnic, like not necessarily why do you go to a multiethnic church, but why do you stay? One year we've done politics, and we bring in people on different sides of the coin, and how do we facilitate a conversation around this? And I think the goal is not to solve the issue. It's more so to share narrative, share story, and be able to see that other person that loves the Lord, but also how do we move together, glorifying Jesus? And I think what it does is, if you have an actual table conversation, I think you read the Bible differently. You read it through the lens of my brother, my sister, my neighbor, versus what is it just for me? So if I love God with all my mind, heart, soul, and my strength, and then I love my neighbor as myself, then there's an extra addition on to that, not just what do I get, but how do I love my neighbor? And a lot of Christians, at least we see, I think, especially on this other side of 2020, that neighbor side is probably the one that people aren't as concerned with, because they're more so me. I think even more than before that, it's individualistic. What's in it for me? And so we're always constantly probing at that. And the crazy thing is, I think outside of the church, people are more inclined to think about the we aspect, if you want to say it's. And so I find myself challenging our people more to think outside of this bubble of church, and it's not necessarily just be evangelistic, but which it is. It's a different form of just how do you sit at the table with the person that's different than you, votes different than you, eats different than you, walks different than you, all of those things. And so I think it's all different ways. And I want you to talk on this mic too, but you see this in Jesus's ministry, in the sense of he's got the large gatherings, he's got the smaller gatherings, the 12, he's got the 70 sends out, he's got the 3 that are within the 12. So I just think we need to fight to have those spaces with our people and be with the people outside of the church and create tables. So we use that same language here at our church.
Derrick, that is genius. I love that you would take a Sunday a month, regardless of topic, and I'm sorry for the background noise. My goodness. That you would take a week or a weekend and literally model how you have hard conversations. Because it's not that rarely do we convince each other or change each other's minds. But there is no teaching at all on how to demonstrate social hospitality when you're disagreeing. So well done, dude. That's absolutely brilliant. We do something a little bit like that. We don't do Bible studies. We don't do small groups. We do one thing. We have a table, the Lord's Supper that we celebrate every Sunday. And then once a month, we have something called the table, which is where our whole church gathers around dining room tables on a Sunday night. And we have trusted hosts that do this with a clear set of values. But that's where all of this begins to happen for us. And you begin to, because our church is split down the middle between Democrats and Republicans. It's hard to make enemies of people you've had dinner with. And so exactly to your point, Derrick, that's one practical way. Another thing that we do is we have people who ask questions in the room and then text in questions. And then we do and again, this is just our context, but we do a small podcast with 4 different perspectives answering the questions, some of the spicier questions that come in, modeling that same sort of approach. And so we found that to be helpful for people who will share it, and because we don't always agree on stuff. And it's just, again, it's exactly what you're saying. It's the modeling of social hospitality in ways that we just don't see. There's no forum for them anymore.
Have you ever come across the phenomenon as you're hosting these gatherings or you're creating spaces and cultivating tables for people to, say the quiet part out loud or share their perspective, where someone comes to you and they say, Pastor, I feel like I'm not welcomed here because I didn't agree with what the majority of the people in the room said. Have you ever come across that, and how do you pastor through that?
What do you think, Mike? I think yes. Simply. What would you say to that, Mike? Yeah.
Oh, Derrick, I'm with you. Anytime you're going to talk about, man, I'm so sorry for the vacuum cleaner. Good Lord.
Got some construction going on in the Erre home.
Seriously, I'm jealous. I was ribbing Caleb a little bit because of this tiny closet that he podcasts out of. I'm in the middle of my living room, and so
this is my normal office.
I know, but yeah, it's very fancy. I just feel like everything wrong with church is embodied in that office right there.
I don't have a bathroom in here. There's no shower. There's no extra, there's no
That's fair.
I don't have a conference room adjacent.
I know. I'm just picking on you. Totally. It's a beautiful
Nashville trying to get all up in my Phoenician business.
Never. No, I would say, dude, so sorry. So one of the things that if people leave, we want them to leave for the right reasons rather than the wrong ones. And so Jesus didn't chase people. So we're very big adherents of something called center set theory and practice. A guy named Mark Baker wrote a book on this, and he was channeling an older missiologist's work on this. And the idea is we talk about the center, who is Christ. We don't police boundaries, is the long and short of it. You can create unity one of two ways: by defining what we're against and who our enemies are, or by clarifying what we're for. And so when we get to those conversations and we're clarifying who are the people Jesus prioritizes at his table, there are people who are offended by that. Absolutely. And we think that's a good leave. A bad leave is if I've added to the offense in a manner or a way of speaking or a note of condescension or whatever. That's bad, and those are people we go and seek repair with. But it's impossible. I just think it's absolutely impossible to talk about the kind of things that are happening in our world in any way, shape, or form and not have somebody hear them through a partisan lens. And because that's been the primary source of discipleship. That's the great colossal failure of the American, at least my branch of the American evangelical church, has been that we've realized that we've been discipled into political categories rather than biblical ones. And so you can't talk about immigration without people hearing, oh, well, you're pro or against. And so we've tried to start that train all the way back on, okay, what does it mean to be political? The church is political. Jesus is Lord is a political statement. You can't avoid being political. We're a political entity, but we're not partisan. And so we spend loads of time trying to discern that to help people. That combined with kind of a center set approach is the best we can do and trying to have conversations in a healthy way. I think there are some who are just going to hear a word or two and think, yep, woke mind virus or Trump derangement syndrome, and they just can't help it. And I don't think those people I don't think we're supposed to go after those people. I think we just preach the center, and Jesus sorts it out. Derrick, how does that sound to you? Is that consistent with your practice?
Yeah, I think there's and we felt this in Chicago. Some of the churches that struggled, I think, after 2020, were the churches that weren't really engaged, I think, with what's going on in society, socially, culturally. And what we try to do is, as a church, be as engaged as we can. I do believe it's simply what you said, preach the gospel. There's also this I named it earlier, just being proactive with a lot of the things that are going on. But you'll hear me say from the pulpit to people, I want them to be able to check their presuppositions at the door. And
That's good.
And the Sunday that you walk in should never be like the Sunday of you. It shouldn't be the Sunday of Derrick. And so if I walk in and the preacher says everything I want him to say, the songs are sang that I like to sing, I get to sit in my favorite seat, everything just is my way, then I failed, because that means somebody in here was ostracized. Somebody else didn't like this, because it's not about me. And so we, from a ecclesiology, from a space where when we form our church, we're just we're thinking through that lens of the new person and trying to figure out how do we not necessarily be inclusive, but just intentionally think about who is all stepping foot in here and how we meet that new person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that in our preaching, I'm going to try my best to think about all of those people too. We're not going to hit everything. We're also not hit everything in society. And there's times where people hear things. I think it might have been, I don't remember if it was George Floyd or another incident, but I remember saying something and recognizing it, because it just had happened. And so I said something, and someone came up to me, to your point, Mike, and was like, well, you didn't say anything about the police officer that was killed a week ago. And I'm like, I didn't know about that. And there wasn't an uproar around it. And they were like, well, it's not just Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. And I said, I didn't say anything about Black Lives Matter, but I do know that there are people in this church right now that are hurting, that are confused. And we need the scripture tell us to meet with those people where they are and be with them.
That's good.
And I want to recognize what's going on. I don't just recognize when a Black man's killed by a police officer. I notice when other things happen in society and other tragedies, whether it's immigration or even recognizing the difference in politics. And so but in that moment, to Mike's point, her issue and that person's issue was not necessarily that name that. It was more so what they wanted versus what had been said. Because it was the way I did it. Everybody loved it. White, Black, in between. It wasn't it was just her presupposition of what she thought should happen. Her husband actually even apologized. Like, I'm sorry, man. This is something we deal with in our home. So, but to your point, I'm like, well, and I'll say it from the pulpit. It's like, this may not be the church for you. That's okay.
Yeah.
I will help you find a good church in the city. I lead a whole organization with different churches in it, and I would love to get you plugged
I
in because I
love that.
want you to be
Yeah.
spiritually enhanced and in a place that makes sense for you. But that doesn't
Yeah.
have to be renewal.
That's
And
good.
I
so
love that.
that's the tough part of being multi-ethnic, multicultural too. It's sexy until you feel the multi-ethnic rub, and things like, oh, wait a second, you don't
Yeah.
do this that way, and
Yeah.
I do it this way. It's like, yeah, but that's the beauty of it if we're able to push past that and see the unity of John 17. But
Derrick, I have a question for you. And I'm wondering if it's different in a multi-ethnic church. For us, it's news that there are social implications from the gospel. That's news. One of the things we've had to do consistently has been to just spend time on, the resurrection leaves behind a certain kind of community, and that community erases. Oh, Jesus says yes. I heard that. I
it has
heard
been
that.
going crazy in Chicago, like since 10 o'clock last night,
Oh my
thunderstorms.
goodness, man. Woo! Yeah, I mean that makes me feel a little better. The vacuuming isn't the only
Is it
crazy thing
is it
happening.
raining?
At the moment, no. I mean, that's been the wild part.
Just lots of
Sometimes it's
thunder.
raining hard, but it's like lightning
Yeah.
shows
Wow.
in the sky. So
Yeah,
Do you find?
we don't do that here.
No, you don't.
So,
No,
Mike,
you
you were going to
don't.
add value to this conversation?
No, I wasn't. I was just gonna ask a question. Because I was trying to figure out, do you have to do that remedial work, or can you assume some of that in your context? Because for us, it takes a lot of time just to establish justice as a biblical word. That's not a bad word. And so, do you have thoughts on
no, I
that?
do, and that's a great question. Yeah, I would say typically we have to. How do I say this? I say it's a tension to manage, not a problem to solve. A lot of times with this, but it's
Mm,
so we're
mm,
teaching on the social implications of the gospel and the fact that it's both the cross, both vertical and horizontal, vertically
yep.
reconciled to God, but also horizontally to one another. But that horizontal implication means that we have to learn to deal with some of these social implications and things that people believe that are different than you. But I will say, on the other side of that, I find myself with people. Well, it's on both sides. We have people that don't want us to say as much. Then you have a lot that would love for us to say more,
Yeah.
and that's where I just find that tension to manage versus I'm not going to say everything, but I'm also not going to say nothing.
Nothing.
So I think we're gonna and do it in a way where we're going to challenge both sides because the one that's very too socially engaged, I need you to be more gospel oriented. The one that's not engaged at all, I need you to be more socially engaged because the gospel calls us to be this way. And so,
Yeah.
and then it comes back to that point of if people want more than that, hey, that's just not us,
Yeah.
and
And there are
that's
loads
okay.
of churches that would go either of those directions
Yep.
and not live in that tension, for sure.
Hmm.
And I think that's a really big point, is that hospitality requires everyone give some.
Amen.
Your illustration about just a Sunday of Derrick and that being bad, like for a lot of people, that's the goal of church, that I just sit and be affirmed in everything I'm thinking and feeling. But the kind of hospitality you're talking about, and I think we want, is the kind of hospitality that requires everybody give a little bit, or it's not true biblical hospitality. I think that's a really profound point.
So, I think all three of us have been in this scenario where we're leading a bunch of misfits, and most of them are like, that's what we're here for, like socioeconomic, ethnic diversity, political
Mm,
diversity, all the bits. And then something happens that they find out about through social media, the news, whatever it might be. And it could be a tragedy, it could be a scandal, it could be a something. And there's a discernment process that we're invited into of, do I say anything? Do we say anything? From on the church letterhead, in the email newsletter, on social media. Oftentimes for me, it's most difficult to discern when I find out about the thing Saturday night.
Right.
And I'm already locked in for tomorrow's sermon. And how are you thinking through those things and maybe framing it, for pastors who are, maybe we've not been in those positions before, maybe some younger pastors. What coaching would you give for how to process that when you get that email Saturday night, or that thing hits on social media and you're like, a lot of people in my congregation are going to be feeling feelings by this.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate? What questions are you asking yourself? What processes are you working through?
Yeah. For us, we find, and none of this is solved. I mean, it's like, how do we do stuff? It's all of it's got its own set of issues, and we're all still working it out. The one space that we've done, though, with tragedy and controversy has been the lament space. So when there were ICE raids early June in Nashville, where the Tennessee Highway Patrol was helping, they were just pulling over random cars, checking license, registration, whatever. And then if there was a chance these people were here illegally, then ICE would come in and take it from there. And this was also while there were videos floating around social media of a woman being separated from her child, and just very graphic and ugly. And it was Mother's Day. And so what we decided to do was to just pray a prayer of lament. And there's so many that are written. There's so many there's some we write. There's some that we sing. But we just said, listen, I know we disagree on immigration and as an issue. I know we voted differently, but I think we can all agree on the fact that that we are responsible to advocate for the image of God in every single human person. And so I just prayed a prayer of heartbreak. Just God, we hate that this is tearing our nation apart. We pray for wisdom. We pray for protection for law enforcement. We pray for all the things. And that, surprisingly, in a very, polarized sort of situation, the lament piece was the piece that brought us together, because I think we were all lamenting what was happening in our world. And that's if I have to do an immediate reaction, it's just going to be a prayer of lament over something that allows us to mention it, to let people know we're here, to recognize some people are suffering from it. But it also gives space for people to not hear it through a partisan lens, but rather, man, can we just all agree as a culture, these issues need to be resolved in a healthier way? And, maybe those turn into sermons down the road. But at least for me, that was the way we framed it with one very recent example.
Yeah, and I would say something similar to Mike. When I hear things the night before, and you mentioned it too, Caleb, there's a discernment process, or even talking to my elders. I think it was recently, I cannot remember, like a bombing or so with Israel and Palestine. There was something that happened in the middle of the night. And I knew my church would be just rocked regardless of which side they stood on. And so we did the same thing. Before I got into my sermon, I just acknowledged the moment, and we prayed. We talked about some of it, and without being on one side or the other, I think you just have to recognize the state of where people are, lament, and the reality is that none of this is the Lord's design. He would want us to be in a place of shalom and peace with Him, but what do? I think being engaged and acknowledging the space is
huge.
Like 90% of the battle. You need to be acknowledging that, and people are seen. They feel seen that way. I think you do have to equip them how to walk through it, but a lot of times we don't acknowledge the moment. We don't see the moment we're in, and
that's right.
And then essentially we don't see our people. And so, in 2020 we led some marches here in the city with some of the injustices that were going on, and thousands of Christians would show up. So it wasn't just our church, but we band together with other churches, and that happened. So, and for us, people were just thankful that we not only acknowledged it, but we said, hey, let's go and let's stand together as a church, and change happened. So I think it's got to be both in, but when stuff happens like that the night before, and I would say there's some things we don't acknowledge. So
Yeah.
and some people may be up, some people are okay with it. I don't think you could do everything because I think that's when you do get too socially engaged, if you want to say so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's really good, Derrick. You don't want to always be reacting to things that are
exactly.
happening. You want to be like forward looking and discipling towards something. Yeah, I don't know that I answered your question hearing Derrick talk, because it was more, how do you discern? And we have a very wonderfully opinionated crew of co-pastors and teachers who, some are very much socially aware and others are just like, dude, let's just preach the freaking Bible and, move along. And if that crew can come to a consensus about what's worth talking about, then there are other things, though, I think, that demand immediate response. The bombing, the American bombing of targets in Iran. We have a pastor who's from Iran. She's an immigrant, and her story just demands that we acknowledge, something like that. And so I don't know that there's a tried and true thing, but I love if we acknowledge the tension, then I feel safe lamenting. Because I love what you said, Derrick. That is how you see your congregation. I think that's really wise.
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate that note that my congregation is unique and that there are people in my congregation and how this thing is impacting the people that I'm here to care for. So what Pastor Derrick did or what Pastor Mike did, that may or may not be the wisest, most loving thing that we can do in our congregation,
Right.
given our context, given our circumstance. You noted the Iranian pastor that you serve with. I remember the day that I was ready to hit send on a prayer and a lament for the Gaza, just the horrible tragedy that was there, a year and a half ago now, almost 2 years now, and got a note because I had our leadership, our council of servant leaders, we were processing through this, how to respond, what flavor, and one of my teammates is Indian, and he said, "Hey, are you going to make sure to also mention this horrible tragedy that happened in India? I think it was a hurricane." And I had zero clue.
Yeah,
zero. Now there's about 30 families in my congregation that are from this region that this particular CSO member is like well aware, knows the people enough to be able to say, hey, make sure that you don't leave this out too. And that can be difficult because we're not just discerning what's important or top of mind for me as the pastor, but also what's on the mind of the people that I'm here to serve, and how do we defer to each other. And I love that you're bringing that in. And also, Derrick and Mike, you've both mentioned the practice of lament as part of the rhythm of worship. And so have you guys seen this thing where like someone on social media will be like, if your pastor doesn't say something about this, you need
to Yes.
And I get the instinct. The instinct is it's easy for pastors oftentimes to bury their head in the sand and not bring the gospel to bear on current affairs. Like I get the instinct. I also feel the pressure of like, well, I don't think the pulpit's the spot to talk about that thing, frankly, given my context of the congregation. But having the lament space baked in, it sounds like you're both shepherding your congregation to intuit, this is how we're going to respond in the short term. Horrible thing happened. I know what we do is I'm not waiting for a social media post from we're going to lament it.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. I think it's less teaching our people to be less reactive, more proactive. And so when things happen, so for instance, there was this is early on in our church when Michael Brown, that incident with Michael Brown and his killing, I acknowledged it, but I didn't go into it very deep. I acknowledged it. We walked through it. Most of the church was perfectly fine with it. They knew what we believed. They knew how we walked through these things, and we had done things in light of this, and proactively engaged. But there was a new couple there on that Sunday, and they heard the way I spoke about it and sent me a long message of like, hey, I feel like you should have dedicated the whole service to it, and you should have done this and that. And I used it, and I told our staff, I said, what do you guys think about this? And they said, well, one, they're new, they wouldn't have known, but yeah, we do enough of that in our church in terms of how we engage something like this. We knew how to engage it. We were just glad that you acknowledged it. And so I had to write back and tell them like, hey, if you come multiple Sundays, you'll see that this is ingrained in the fabric of our church and how we're engaged in society. We do more than most, etc. Not trying to defend it, but just say, hey, you can't judge by one like 10-minute section of my sermon versus you saying it should be 50. So I think that there is a high priority on, at least, and most people in our church, definitely our leaders will tell you that is something that Derrick preaches. Like, hey, we need to be more proactive. And so when things happen, it's not me always, like to your point, Caleb, posting something or having to say something, because I know our people are going to say something. And so they'll react in that sense, and because they've been hopefully discipled to be able to do so. So yeah, you're on target, exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that my tribe, my white evangelical tribe, never taught me to lament. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what protest was. All it was everything had to end with a cliche, a casserole, or a pretty red bow. and that was it, right? Even at funerals, you'd be offering, yep, God needed another angel or whatever. And so the introduction of a regular diet of lament by itself, without any particular occasion, has begun to train myself and some of our folks that that's the response to anything that's happening in the world. We have a category for that. That's not spiritually bypassing. It's not being consumed by it, but there's a place in the lectionary and the vocabulary of Jesus following that allows us to give words to that.
Yeah.
And then in terms of being proactive, that's been a huge thing for us.
That's good.
You're good.
Hey, who are you to say who is good?
He's got
only
the
God
best
above
nickname.
is good.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're listening,
people don't become angels when they die, right? Like that's not true.
I mean, it wouldn't.
Maybe in Tennessee. Maybe some geography. So one last thing. So as we land the plane, and by that I mean I'm done talking to you both.
That's fair.
So if you were to be introduced to a young pastor, they're just starting out this year, and they say, what's one of the most valuable lessons you've learned over the last 10 years, 20 years of your pastoral ministry? What would you give them?
Golly. I'd have him talk to Derrick.
Yeah, good. Definitely.
Right out of the gate.
One thing? That's a hard question.
Something that comes to mind.
I mean, one thing that I've held on to as we planted our church is what is the vision that God has given you, and to hold tightly to that vision and mission that you have for your church. God gave me this vision of a multi-ethnic, multicultural, disciple-making church, which I knew was going to come with all the things we've been naming here. And with that, I've just had to hold on to the vision and the call on my life, which has allowed me to manage that tension really well. When I would say most people would say, yep, I'm just going to pack it up and be done with this, especially 2020 hits. It's like, nope, I'm not doing this. And so the call and the vision that God gives you is special, and to guard that thing, because some people and the enemy will try to take it from you and change it and have you running after something else. So I would say guard that vision and the calling that God has put on your life. And I think it'll not only lead you well, but take you where God wants you to go. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one that came to mind, if this is just general advice, is the amount of hidden and obscure work you need to do to stay healthy when you have a financial incentive to appear more holy than you are is staggering.
Ugh.
And it corrupts. It has corrupted such large swaths of American Christianity in my own heart that I think platform chasing is death. I just think the ministry of obscurity, the ministry of hiddenness, the ministry of humility, like those things. And if God gives it, great. If we pursue it, I don't trust it. So I just kind of think that when there's a professional incentive, that's death, man. And so I would just let them know, you think working for a church is just an easy pathway to holiness or something. I think it's just the reverse. I think you actually have a harder time pursuing Jesus in some ways. And and I think that's the shadow side of what Derrick is saying. Like when you have one of the things that gets you through is the vision or call, for sure. But if there's not that, if there's not a molten core that is firm in your heart, then you're just going to be swayed by money, opportunity, or attention.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And those things are anti-kingdom in ways that we're seeing all over the place.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, it's a cautionary tale that for many of our peers, when they announce to their local congregation that God has called them to a new ministry, it's usually bigger audience or more money.
Yeah.
And rarely are we seeing our peers being called to a more obscure ministry.
Yeah.
And that is at least, I think, a caution.
Totally. Well, just even the people we have at our pastors' conferences. I mean, it always struck me that at least this was in my era. So this was the Rob Bell, Mark Driscoll. These were my peers, the Gen X. I didn't realize that the people that spoke at pastors' conferences often had books that were coming out. And I'm not saying that's all bad or these are bad people, or I'm not saying anything like that. I didn't realize the degree to which that changes the equation of what it is to be participating in some of these bigger things. We have to charge for everything because we're commodifying everything. So it's just interesting. I'm in the middle of trying to refigure all of that out.
Yeah. That's good.
Man, that's good. On that cheery note, gentlemen, I want to say thank you for your partnership in ministry and your friendship. And where can people find you and your work?
I'm in Chicago, Illinois, in the city, heart of the city, Renewal Church of Chicago. You can also find me on all different social platforms, just Derrick Puckett. And so, look forward to hearing from you. But check us out online, YouTube services. Our website's renewalchicago.com too. So pretty simple.
Love that. Like every other middle-aged white guy out there, I have a podcast.
I feel targeted.
I'm just saying, we started 10 years ago, Caleb. So we started early. First
the office, now the pod. Okay, go ahead. Did you want to say something about my hat?
I'm just jealous. No, I love your hat. I just think, I think it's a crutch. I think you need to shave things and just let it go. Let it go.
If I want more of this fashion advice, where can I find you?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So we have a podcast in the church and all those things. So hallelujah.
What's the podcast called? Called Voxology.
Voxology. Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, boys.
All right.
Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you, Caleb.
Thank you for listening to the J29 Coalition Podcast. For more information, visit j29coalition.com.